Good evening, folks, and welcome back to another episode of NASCAR Backmarker Battles. I am your host, Colby Evans, aka Startin' Parker on Twitter, and we have an interesting show for you guys today. No preview show, just a review show, just the Sonoma Raceway review, as we had Sonoma Raceway, the road course racing this past weekend. Always fun to go back to the road courses. Not my personal cup of tea of racetracks I prefer to watch racing at, but still, nonetheless, a very fun weekend of racing. We're here to review that, so we might not be here for as long as we usually are on this show, but I still welcome you all for joining me on tonight's show. We're going to go through my little intro that I go through at the beginning of every show, and we will jump right into the Sonoma review. So you guys know the drill. Follow me on social media at Startin' Parker on Twitter for all ARCA news, lower budget team news, and occasional funny, dumb tweets you guys are used to. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on that bell for notifications so you guys never miss when we go live for a podcast. And, of course, check out theracingexperts.com for all NASCAR media-related content. So let's get right into it. Sonoma Raceway, not personally one of my favorite road courses. And I think the one thing I wanted to talk about before we got right into the racing was I feel like the expansion of road courses on the schedule has actually hurt Sonoma in some way because – truth to be told, it's never been the most exciting road course. I think it was just kind of its backdraws to it were kind of hidden because NASCAR only went to two road courses a year in the Cup Series, Watkins Glen and then Sonoma. And I prefer Watkins Glen. I've said it many times on the podcast. Watkins Glen is my favorite road course. But I feel like the negatives of Sonoma were kind of hidden because we only went there 2 times a year to road courses. Now that we have multiple different road courses, some way more entertaining than others, it really exposes some road courses in particular for sometimes how boring it can get sometimes. And I feel like, unfortunately, that was kind of the case with what we saw this weekend. Were both races bad? No. I'm not going to say I voted no on Jeff Gluck's poll, as you guys were wondering. But no, I didn't think either of the races this weekend were bad, but definitely not very great. Good. So we'll call it like that. No truck series here this year. They returned last year, and it looks like that was just a one and done. Xfinity series, this was their very first time here, I believe. Was this their very first time here? Or did they run here like in the Sportsman days in the 80s? I don't quite remember, but Xfinity series was here. Big entry list was expected. We had 41 cars here for 38 spots, so we were going to have some extra entries because Portland only had 38. We had 41 here. Some of the oddball entries, we had quite a few for this race. Quite a few oddball entries for this race, which kind of low-key sucked because I always like seeing the Cup guys in the ARCA West field. So, unfortunately, because the Xfinity Series was here, a lot of drivers just chose to run in that car. Ty Dillon, which is kind of weird because you think, oh, maybe Ty, drives, kind of a special car. Like, no, it's a full JD Motorsports setup. It's a full JD Motorsports setup that Ty Dillon was driving, which makes me wonder how much is he really learning if he's in a JDM car. I mean, that's not taking anything away from that organization, but, I mean, you're driving a lesser car than what you drive in the Cup Series. I don't understand what you're really learning. Brennan Poole, of course, back in the 6. Daniel Suarez in the 07. That was kind of an oddball entry, considering how much the 07 has struggled this year. Kyle Weatherman in the 08. Glad to see him back in the Xfinity Series. A.J. Allmendinger in the 10. Kyle Larson in the 17. I don't understand why a guy who's already won 2 races at Sonoma needs to run a support race. That didn't make any sense to me. Eric Almirola in the 28. Now, since this was a full SHR prepared car, RSS went ahead and entered a third car anyway for their organization, the number 29 for Alex LeBay. Leland Honeyman, who was usually driving for Tommy John Martins, was in the Emerling Gase 35 car, which was weird. It kind of predicted it would be Parker Chase. Josh Bilicki, it was in the 36, a third DGM car. Dylan Lupton was in the 43 for Alpha Prime. Sage Karam is in the 44. And it looks like the Jeffrey Earnhardt has been, at least for now, permanently moved over to the 45, mainly because that car is like 24th in points, so it's locked into every race. Jeffrey's a good racer. He's just not a good qualifier. So to make sure that Jeffrey's locked into the show, because he definitely brings the most money, you got to make sure he's in the show because you got to keep the sponsors happy. You guys know how all that works. Brad Perez, everybody's favorite Brad Perez. I don't know who could hate him. Everyone loves him. In the 53, Mason Filippi, MBM was taking a real shot entering this race, considering that they were a long shot to make the show. Carl got the best road ringer he could probably find that wasn't already taken. And Ross Chastain in the 91. Those were kind of our oddball entries. 3 cars were going home. A lot of people are saying, what would the reason why that Kyle Sieg was not in the 28? I've heard some differing reasons why. I can understand if it was a business decision. I can tell you right now, I don't think Kyle Sieg probably would have got that car in the show on time. I don't think he would have. He's not the strongest road racer. And, when you're hauling a car all the way out there, you got to make the show. You can't afford to miss the show, especially for a team that's spending as much as RSS. And I wonder if it was just a business decision to take Kyle out of the car, put in Alex, because Alex, usually we see him with sponsorship. When he drives the car, he was driving with sponsorship. But this car was completely unsponsored. So it really makes me wonder if this was a last-minute business decision. Now, I believe Kyle was still there. He was driving the ARCA West race. But he didn't have to worry about qualifying for that one. So I believe it was a business decision. And I like Kyle Sieg. Kyle Sieg's a cool guy. But I don't think he would have made the race in the 29 car. And it was a better decision to put a road ringer in there who can get that car solidly in the show, which Alex Labbe did. So, yeah, my skepticism was high coming into this race, but I was really worried for the MBM cars again, because they're just taking a long shot with this. And unfortunately, practice speeds kind of backed that up. Filippi was only 40th quickest in practice, 4 seconds off the pole. I mean, Larson was he blew the field away in practice, so you couldn't even compare really times. I mean, he was a second faster than the whole field. So I really compare it to second, but he was just off the pace. In general, RSS was actually quite off the pace. Joe Graf Jr. was 39th. Ryan Sieg only 38th. Labbe was 26th. So like I said, I really do think from a business standpoint, it was the best decision to put Alex Labbe in that 29 car versus Kyle Sieg, taking nothing away from Kyle Sieg. But when you look at it from a business perspective, I think you guys can understand the picture maybe a little bit better. Although, like I said, I would prefer Kyle Sieg in the 29. I really would. Some notables that were struggling in qualifying, Alpha Prime, they've had a really rough couple weeks. I think they're at total well over $50,000 in hauler repairs. They're looking at after these 2 weeks. Earnhardt was slowest in practice, which isn't shocking. Jeffrey Earnhardt will tell you himself. He's not the best on road courses. Road courses are not his strongest suit for Jeffrey Earnhardt. He'll tell you that himself. So this was kind of just one of those get-through weekends for him, slowest. Dylan Lupton was 32nd. Sage Karam, we know he's a road ringer, so he can actually do pretty good, 24th. Brad Perez, I'll say, is very impressive by Brad Perez. For a guy who has not competed in many Xfinity Series races and has really just driven the Miatas most of his driving career, it is very impressive to see take, I would say, a lower-tier team, Emerling Gase Motorsports, and easily practice his way into the top 33. I mean, he was 25th in practice. That's very impressive. And is Brad making another oval start this year? I'd like to see what he could really do at a 1.5-mile track. But he's really showing a lot in that Emerling Gase car. Josh Bilicki in the DGM car, we knew he would be strong. He's a great road ringer. 17th. Daniel Suarez was 16th in the 07. Not quite sure if this was a actual Bobby Daughter car or if this car did have some Chevrolet support behind it, because we know Daniel Suarez, obviously Trackhouse Chevrolet. So maybe Trackhouse helped SS Greenlight out with a motor. We know the 08 was a full setup. I love, again, how the Bobby Daughter team is reusing old wraps for their cars. Because if you guys look at Kyle Otherman's 08 car, it actually has a wrap from 2020 on it. Back when Joe Graf Jr. had this weird JDRF sponsor. I think that was the sponsor, but it had this weird green and blue and white wrap on it, and they're still using it in 2023. I like that. Reuse old wraps. I mean, you might as well. It's not hurting anything. They're saying it was a full SS Greenlight car in the chat, which makes that even more impressive. the fact that Daniel could take a team that has really been running like garbage this year up into the top 20. And those were kind of the higher back markers. Ross Chastain in the 91. We have seen that when Ross runs the 91, they have gotten a little bit of help in the motor department. Yes, the car comes from DGM, but they have gotten a little bit of help in the motor department. I know they had a motor help at Darlington, and it wouldn't shock me if they had some help here. Cool to see Skip Barber Racing School sponsoring in the Xfinity Series. They were on the 91. But yeah, going into qualifying for Xfinity, the cars that were not looking good were the 6 of Poole, 35 of Honeyman, and the 66 of Filippi, and they would end up being the DNQs as we'll fast forward to qualifying. Qualifying the next day, and I listened to the 66 on the radio, and honestly, it was just kind of sad. You know, again, you guys know look at the wall right here. I'm an MBM supporter, thick and thin. I literally have pictures of my dad and I with Carl Long right here that are just here. I kind of turn the camera. I can't really see it right there, but literally I got photos with my dad and I and Carl Long. I'm an MBM fan thick and through. And this is arguably the art. It sucks to see Uncle Carl go through this, man. That man gave me my big break in the sport, and I wouldn't be able to have the connections in this sport if it wasn't for Carl Long. And man, does it hurt to see his team going through this. You know, Mason, you know, kind of the same thing that Timmy Hill was complaining about at Charlotte, just too loose was kind of the thing. Modern theme I've been hearing is can't put the power down, too loose. So they tightened up the car, and it just wasn't quick enough. You know, Mason picked up about a half a second to a second when he went back out for another run, but it still wasn't anywhere near quick enough. And, you know, listening to Carl on the radio, basically just telling him what he needs, and he's trying to encourage him. And Mason's going out there, and he's trying as hard as he can, listening to his radio, and he was trying too hard, and unfortunately wrecked. Luckily, hardly any damage, if any damage at all to the car. He did spin into the tire barriers, but barely clipped him. I don't think any damage, but he was going for it. Mason was absolutely going for it, and it just sucks. Sucks to see MBM going through this, man. You know, they don't have bad equipment. It's so hard to make these races. You know, it's the one thing we saw in the Xfinity Series back in the late 2000s. You would see a lot of full race teams be sent home by start and park teams that could very easily run top 25, top 20 in the old nationwide races, but the start and park teams would send them home. It was always frustrating. I can't tell you as a kid how frustrating it was seeing Morgan Shepherd go home when he was a full race car and seeing both MSRP cars make the show. That was frustrating. And I'm always shocked that NASCAR never tightened up on that. When a team that you know is not going to run the whole race would make the show, and then you're sending home a full race operation. But I guess at the end of the day, as long as NASCAR gets their tire fees and money and all that, they don't care. Yeah, sucks for Uncle Carl. Mason goes home. All the cars that actually went home went out in the first group. Brennan Poole, he was the fastest out of all three, but it wasn't enough. Ty Dillon barely makes the show. He would have went home. He made the show by less than a tenth. So that was pretty impressive by him. But the 6 goes home. It's the first DNQ of the season for Brennan Poole. The third or fourth DNQ total for JD Motorsports this season. So even cutting back to 2 cars has not necessarily improved JD Motorsports, which really sucks because I got a lot of friends on that team. I'm great friends with the crew chief on the 6 car, Case Collenbach. Love him. Hardworking guy. Busts his ass. Brennan's a great guy too. It's just sometimes you're just not quick enough. You know, there's nothing really wrong with the car. You don't miss the setup. Sometimes you're just not quick enough. And that's the part that sucks. Because you did everything you can, you know, and Brennan did everything he can, but sometimes you're just not quick enough to make the show. And it sucks for Leland Honeyman as well. You know, this is one of the few starts that he has outside of Alpha Prime this year. Was kind of shocked to see him run the road race. I don't really consider him a road racer. But still sucks to see him miss the show. It's the 3rd DNQ, I believe, of the season so the 4th DNQ for JDM, 3rd DNQ for EGM, and the 7th DNQ for MBM. So definitely the cars that missed the show. Really couldn't afford to miss the show, like I said, because they had been really struggling this year. But they do get an off weekend to get their oval cars ready for Nashville. Nashville is expected to have a pretty decent-sized field as well. Maybe with a cup entries, a couple of cup drivers maybe running that race. Maybe. Last year we had some DNQs. I would expect DNQs again. We know the 74 will be there at Nashville. I can confirm that. So we'll just have to see. But Nashville's also going to be pretty touch and go. And we know how wacky those qualifying sessions can get there with how hard it is to drive that concrete oval. But yeah, so those were the DNQs. Some of the underdog stands out in qualifying. Rather than Kyle Larson winning the pole by just an ungodly amount. Unbelievable. We had Alex Labbe 11th. So again, guys, I mean, I know we all wanted to see Kyle Sieg in the 29, but from a business standpoint, I don't blame RSS one bit for putting Alex in the 11. Ross Chastain was 15th. Daniel Suarez was 17th, and Kyle Weatherman 18th. So great showing for SS Greenlight Racing. The first time this season, I believe, that both cars qualified in the top 20. Sage Karam was 21st. Josh Williams was 22nd. Josh Bilicki, surprisingly, all the way down in 25th. We'll say one thing I wanted to say, they're not necessarily a lower tier team, but I wanted to say is what happened to Sam Hunt Racing? Has the expansion to 2 cars really hurt this team that bad? I was never the biggest Kaz Grala fan. I think Kaz is a tiny bit overrated. But what has happened to this team? I mean, even Kaz Grala, who you'd think is a road ringer, and Connor Mosack, who, he runs in the Trans Am series, and both cars outside of the top 25. I mean, they're basically the most competitive Toyota team behind Gibbs, and they really haven't shown any competitiveness really almost at all this year. Very rarely they had. That 24 has really ran like crap most of the time. So, yeah, that was kind of shocking to see those cars run so bad. But, yeah, what has kind of happened to Sam Hunt Racing? It's kind of another thing I noticed, too, over this year. Brad Perez was 31st. He narrowly made the show. Same with Ty Dillon and Dylan Lupton. Again, Ryan Sieg all the way down in 34th. Definitely, Ryan Sieg definitely does not like road courses, having to take a provisional for the first time in quite some time in the Xfinity Series. Anthony Alfredo, kind of forgot to mention him. He had one of the scariest crashes, very similar to Steve Park's crash, except without the flip necessarily. But Steve Park had that horrible crash at Sonoma in either late 90s or early 2000s, and it was almost the exact same spot where Anthony Alfredo had his crash. And it really just goes to show you how much damage tire barriers can do to a car. I mean, that 78 car was total. I don't even think they'll be able to salvage it. We saw them on Anthony's Twitter today at the shop, kind of taking apart the car, seeing what they could use for other cars. But I think this car is totaled. I mean, there's so much damage to it. You rarely see crashes like that, but it's the road courses that bring out those kinds of crashes. And they had the backup car was not necessarily a good car. It was their Portland primary, so they had to kind of buff out some scratches, get the car turned over for Sonoma. And it was going to be kind of one of those get through the weekend type of races. We know we're not going to run good. We're not in a car that's going to run good. Let's just get through the weekend and hopefully, better things will come at Nashville. Something like that. So the 78, he was only 37th in qualifying. Again, not shocking. And Joe Graf Jr., who started shotgun on the field, not really shocking out of him either. He's never really been the best on the road courses, and this race kind of showed. I don't know if this was just kind of a get-through race for him because he really didn't try the entire race. He was kind of the slowest the entire day. Race got going. Unshockingly, Larson just murders the field. I mean, it was unbelievable watching that 17 pull away the way he did. Without stages, too. Early part of the race, we saw that even though some guys could get some good qualifying runs, it was really hard for some of those back markers to stay competitive. The 29, Labbe, he fell outside of the top 20, but kind of stabilized. Really only the 91, the 51, and the 07 were really the only true backmarkers that could probably stay in the top 20. Our first caution came out, the 21 of Retzlaff, and ironically, that happened almost the exact same time. Retzlaff blew a transmission, and the number 8 of Josh Berry stopped on track. The 31 multiple times, if you followed Brock Beard, last car on Brock, please give him a follow. He's awesome. He tracked the 31 poor day. I mean, they got the transmission fixed, but it wouldn't turn over. They got it fixed again, still wouldn't turn over. Never got it fixed, unfortunately. So they didn't get back out. So Retzlaff's day was done after 21 laps. Race got back going green again. Joe Graff would actually get the free pass. That's how slow he was going. And it was kind of the weird phenomenon we rarely see at road courses. We usually don't see lap traffic be a problem at road courses. Usually there's always a caution or, like I said, the stage. Even before the era of stages, we always used to just see cautions happen. But one thing we have definitely seen in the Xfinity Series, especially at road courses, is the races have definitely been cleaner. You know, these guys are racing hard, but they're racing a lot cleaner. And it was one of the rare times where you actually saw somebody go a lap down at a road course. You don't see that very often. So, yeah, the 38 got the free pass. He was back on the lead lap. Again, it was just kind of a mix of tire strategy with these backmarker guys. Some teams trying to play a game, some teams trying to stay out. Unfortunately, we had another retirement. Like I said, Anthony Alfredo, for all that team went through, they actually finally cracked their way into the top 30, but after 44 laps, suspension component broke. And I think rather than try to fix it, they just said, screw it, we're done. Let's just call it a weekend. We don't want to fix anything else. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I know they say there's never give up, but after a weekend like that, I don't blame them. And unfortunately, we actually saw an unfortunate video today. A poor lizard passed away. So RIP to the lizard, who unfortunately passed away in the 78 car in that crash. That sucks. That really sucks. And then a couple laps later, we had another crash. Jeffrey Earnhardt, who I was listening to for the race. The goal was just to try to stay out of trouble with him. He was kind of running around the 38 of Joe Graff Jr. He would unfortunately suffer a crash. Done for the day for them. Josh Williams, he was in and out of the garage with suspension issues. Sage Karam, he got damaged. He would fall out with late transmission issues. Man, that 44 car has kind of been the Achilles heel for Alpha Prime this year. The 43 has done very well. 45 has also done very well, and just that 44 car can't seem to buy any breaks. It is the lowest car in points out of the 3 Alpha Prime cars, and it's way outside of the top 30 10K bonus. The 43 and 45 are fine, but that 44 is not doing very well. And I can see why Alpha Prime would put Jeffrey in the 45 just to make sure that he makes races and put Raja in the 44. From a business standpoint, it makes sense. So we ended up only having the 5 retirees. We had on the last restart with 15 laps to go after Jeffrey's crash, we had some interesting plays at the front. I mean, Larson looked like he had the race in hand. Caution comes out. We have a couple of guys stay out. I believe, did LeBay stay out? I know Daniel Suarez stayed out. The 07 did. Who else stayed out? Can anyone remember that with me? Who stayed out on that last caution? I know it was the 07. Was it the 29 that also stayed out? At one point, LeBay was running like 10th. Did he stay out? Were they out of tires? If anyone in the chat could help me. He did stay out? Okay. So it was the 29 and the 07 that stayed out, and the 28 of Eric Amarola. Now, this was, again, a full SS green like Jesus. A full SHR setup, full SHR chassis. It was a 98 chassis body, but the number was 28 under RSS Racing, just to probably guarantee the car in the show. We've seen teams do this multiple times. So it was the 2 guys out front, and then you guys had Larson and Almirola on fresh tires. And so obviously the guys on old tires got eaten alive. The 29 fell like a rock. The 07 fell a little bit slower, but still fell through the field. And surprising out of all of it, Eric Amarola and the 28 came out with the lead. AJ Allmendinger came out second, and Larson was back to third. And Larson had to use up his car just to get to the lead. And it was really shocking seeing Larson, show weakness. The car was damaged a little bit. That definitely changed the way it was driving. While this was happening, we had a lot happen in the back of the field. Like I said, got bad to worse for Daniel Suarez. They said he jumped the start or something like that, so he had to make a pass-through penalty. So that killed any chance. Any chance the 0-7 had a good day or gaining points wasn't going to happen now. Ryan Sieg, they just, again, I don't know if they missed the setup, but, I mean, he literally didn't run any better than 28th. Brad Perez, late in the game, he fell back. Blaine Perkins, he fell back. Joe Graf Jr., he just wanted to finish. And for Josh Berry and Connor Mosack, I mean, they were multiple laps down as well. But yeah, the race came down, and the 17, I don't know if the steering locked up. He clipped the tire barriers. By the way, NASCAR really needs to enforce those tire barrier penalties. Ever so slightly, they were knocking them out of the way. I don't know if anyone else noticed it, but they were knocking them out of the way to the point where they were just cutting the corner those last 20 laps. Starting to think that, maybe we should have a concrete wall. Instead of just tire barriers, make a concrete turn. So that way if cars want to try to cut the corner, they're going to damage their car, because I'm tired of seeing them cut the corner, blatantly cutting the corner. But something happens to 17 and the 28 of Eric Almirola. Say what you want. Yes, it's just like Cole Custer's win last year, that was a full Stewart-Haas car last year. Same thing here, pit crew, everything. But by technicality, because it's their number, RSS Racing gets their very first career win as an Xfinity organization. And that makes you so happy. They've been in the Xfinity Series since 2013. And it's so great to see. Absolutely wonderful to see this team finally get their first win. Rod Sieg, congratulating there with Eric Almirola. Such a great thing to see. Probably made Ryan Sieg's day. He had a horrible day. Joe Graf Jr. didn't have you definitely don't want to have the turtles. Yes, I mean, we don't want to have turtles, but something to make these guys stop cutting the corner, because that's what they were clearly doing in the last 10, 15 laps. But going back to the win, yes, just great to see Rod Sieg and that team finally get a win, even if it was by technicality, blah, blah, blah. Great to see them get a win nonetheless. Unfortunately, because Eric is a cup driver, they will not be locked into the owners' playoffs, which I hate that, because, I mean, it should be allowed in either way. So the 28, while it's not locked into the owners' championship playoffs, the 28 gained like 5 spots in the owner's points, the most points that car had probably ever gained. So that was great to see. Other backmarkers, Jeremy Clements, who's kind of had a rough, tough year. He got a very solid 17th. Ross Chastain in 19th, or 18th, I mean. Josh Bilicki in 19th, so 2 DGM cars in the top 20. Got to love that. Kaz Gralla, like I said, not sure what's happened to Sam Hunt Racing, but we expect better out of that team than just 20th. Brandon Jones, road courses have not been very kind to Brandon Jones. Kyle Weatherman, 22nd, very nice run. We know the 08 car is the lesser of the 2 cars at SS Greenlight Racing. Greg Galding and that team have parted ways. We know that. So I would definitely say, for the time being, if SS Greenlight Racing needs a guy in that 08 car, Kyle Weatherman is your guy. Kyle Weatherman is easily your guy, and he'll get that 08 car the runs that it needs. Ty Dillon was 23rd, probably one of the better runs the 4 cars had all year. Dylan Lupton was 24th. Alex LeBay, unfortunately, like I said in the end, he fell all the way back to 25th. Jeb Burton only 26th, so kind of a rough day for Jordan Anderson. Daniel Suarez, 27th. Brad Perez, 29th. Blaine Perkins, 30th. Joe Graf Jr., 31st. Sage Karam, 34th. Josh Williams, 35th. Jeffrey Earnhardt, 36th. Anthony Alfredo, 37th. And those kind of remain of our back markers. Overall, I thought the race was okay. Again, not the best place, I think, for the Xfinity Series to go. I'd rather see the Xfinity Series at Road Atlanta or VIR. High-speed road courses, I feel like, are better fit for the Xfinity Series, not these slow, methodical road courses like Sonoma. And yeah, Sonoma has its high-speed moments, but VIR has got some long, great straightaways. And Road Atlanta, like I said, Road Atlanta, VIR would be a better fit for the Xfinity Series than Sonoma. I truly believe that. The standings coming out of this race, Like I said, lots of changes. The 28 goes from 28th in points to 23rd in points. The 66, unfortunately, like I said, they're just focused on making races. They are so far behind in the points for the top 30 10K bonus. They're not even worried about it. The 07, the 4, and I'll even lump in the 44 at this point. They are so far behind that top 30 bubble. It's just about making the race every week because the 07 and the 4 are over nearly halfway behind in points, and they're not going to gain that kind of points back. And even the 44. The 44 is 60 points behind. 60 points behind the top 30 bubble. And the 44 is just not going to gain that. They're not going to gain that kind of points. So I don't expect them to climb up there. The only teams that can really battle for it now are the 53, 35, and the 6, and the 08. And even then, both Emerling Gase cars over 40 points behind. The 08 and the 6, they're over 20 points behind too. So realistically right now, the 30-place gap, 02 Our Motorsports has 169. The 08 for SS Greenlight has 148. That's a pretty big gap considering how close those teams run with each other every week. So it's going to be hard for those teams to catch up. Realistically right now, the top 30 10K bonus is kind of set right now. And, for these teams who are looking in, they're really going to need some miracle magical runs if they want to get that extra $10,000. Because as we know, in this economy and everything else, that extra 10K goes a long way. That didn't mean to rhyme. So now we get into the Cup race. This race obviously had no DNQs because DNQs are a thing of the past when it comes to the Cup Series, especially with this race car. So that's the part that kind of sucks because we always used to – one thing I loved about the road course races is when we would see all these random guys show up. Jim Inglebride, Brandon Ash, Jan Magnuson, who else? Matthias Ekstrom, Jacques Villeneuve, all these great Ron Fellows, all these great road ringers that would show up in random rides or their own rides. We don't see that anymore. Man, that sucks. Only 36 cars as usual. Not much changes for the entry list. Todd Gilliland back in the 51 with Zane Smith in the 38. Andy Lally in a last-minute deal with Camping World in the 15 for Rick Ware. And Josh Bilicki, unsurprisingly, in the 78, as this would actually give Live Fast Motorsports a great run. Grant Enfinger would be in the 42 for Legacy Motor Club, as Noah Gragson is sitting out with a concussion. Sonoma practice for this race. It was pretty self-explanatory of who was going to struggle. Obviously, Grant Enfinger it was going to be hard for him to run this race. He's not the really, I would consider, a road ringer. So this was kind of a really tough go for him in the beginning. And I will say I did not expect Andy Lally to struggle this much. We've seen a lot of improvement out of the Rick Ware Racing camp, and I sang their praises at Charlotte with their top 20 finish. But boy, was this weekend a struggle for them. The 51 seemed fine, but man, the 15 was just all over the place in this race. Car was too loose, just skating all over the place. I had never heard Andy Lally so panicked on the radio. It was weird. It was really weird seeing that. Obviously, Josh Bilicki, this is kind of his wheelhouse, so he actually showed some halfway decent speed for Live Fast. They weren't slowest. 33rd, which again, not really a celebration, but better than last. Todd Gilliland up in 27th. Again, he's really doing everything he can for Rick Ware. Still ran faster than the 38, so I guess that's a positive for him. And Ty Dillon, kind of considering the other backmarker, all the way up there in 23rd. Qualifying went kind of the same. Ty Dillon was the fastest backmarker, up in 27th. Josh Bilicki, a very impressive 29th, I'll say. Qualifying ahead of two Penske cars. Actually, technically three if you count the 21. I have no idea what's happened to Wood Brothers Racing, but man, has Harrison Burton taken that team into irrelevancy. Austin Cindric, who's supposedly an amazing road racer, he just has not had a good Cup career. And the sad part is, you can call a hot take all you want. He was great in Xfinity, but just feels like Austin Cindric's going to have a Trevor Bayne level Cup career. Or Stenhouse level Cup career, where he's great in Xfinity, but man, when he moves to Cup, he just can't just give you the same results. So we get to the race, and, like I said, I don't know why everyone's complaining. I told you I openly hate stages, and seeing them go 50 straight laps was great to see. It was awesome. I enjoyed natural pit strategy, these guys battling on track, tire management. Love to see it. Unfortunately for some backmarkers, it was a long day. Like I said, for Andy Lally, I didn't not expect him to be that slow. And you wouldn't even know he was in the field. I don't even think they acknowledged him. Like, you really would not even have known Andy Lally was even in the 15 car. He struggled all day. 42 of Enfinger, he struggled very early in the beginning. He was actually last, I would say, for most of the first part of this race, but who actually would come around in the end. And 78 of Josh Bilicki, I mean, he was really outrunning, two Penske cars, SHR cars for most of the day. He was running around 26th, 27th most of the day until a late race spin. There's not really a lot to talk about for the backmarkers in this race. If you want to count the 47 as a backmarker, which I really don't, they're not a backmarker. They're more of an underdog team. There's kind of a difference between a backmarker organization and an underdog organization. 47 fits more into underdogs, as they have the money to compete, but they don't have the unlimited budget. Whereas the guys in the back of the pack just don't have the money to compete really at all. They're just kind of there, if that makes sense. Only a couple cautions. We had that stupid caution for that tire. I mean, come on. The tire hit the pit wall and was literally rolling back. It was sitting 5 feet from a box. You're telling me a crew member couldn't run out and go get it? Like, come on. And Sonoma's got a closed pit road. You're really telling me a crew member or a NASCAR official couldn't just walk out there? What, you're going to get risk getting hit by a car? Come on. There was nobody on pit road. That was one of the dumbest cautions I've ever seen. It's one thing for throwing that caution when that fuel guy ran out and got that tire at Atlanta all those years ago. But this was such a stupid yellow. Have a guy or have an official run out there, grab the tire, take you 4 seconds to go do it. And instead they got to throw a caution and run, felt like 10 years under yellow, even if it only was 3 laps. It was so stupid. We had another caution for Denny Hamlin crashing. It was really the only other incident for the race. The final 35 cars finished the event. Andy Lally and Zane Smith got caught a lap down early, so they didn't really have a chance to do anything in the race. Kind of an embarrassing performance for both of them. I think Andy Lally deserves better, and Zane Smith deserves better too. So sucks for the 38 and the 15. They're better than that. We know they're better than that. The 78 of Josh Bilicki got spun in that last run, so he didn't really get a chance to do anything. Grant Enfinger, actually shout out to Grant Enfinger in this last run. I mean, despite running last most of the day, he climbed up to 26th, and I will say a fairly decent effort by Grant Enfinger in what is actually his Cup Series debut. 26th, not bad at all. And I think the real sad part is looking at the statistics. This is actually the best finish for the 42 car since Atlanta. Just to give you an insight, or since actually Austin, COTA. Grant Enfinger got the 42 cart's best finish since Austin. Now, Noah Gragson also finished 26th at Darlington, so you could say it ties it, but it's like, man, really shows you that Enfinger, he's been in this game a long time, from ARCA to trucks, couple of Xfinity appearances. He's a real underdog driver, and if given the chance, he could be something. But unfortunately, Grant Enfinger's like Matt Crafton. He's just a truck series lifer. And you know what? That's okay, as long as he's in the sport. But yeah, felt bad for Josh Bilicki. They deserved way better than 30th place. Legacy Motor Club just continues to have a rough season overall. Eric Jones only 32nd. Ryan Blaney, I don't know what happened to Penske today. The 2 and the 12 were just irrelevant. The 21 was irrelevant. Despite winning the Xfinity race, Eric Amarola finished 28th. Chase Briscoe down in 29th. Todd Gilliland, like I said, 24th for Rick Ware Racing. While the 15 struggled, the 51 did great. Very solid run for the 51. Ty Dillon, 77. 23rd for him. Very solid run for him as well. So at least for the couple of guys, they ran well. Xfinity race, in my opinion, was better than the Cup Series race by miles. Still overall not the best weekend of racing. Again, I think Sonoma is one of the weaker of the road courses on the schedule. Still not going to call it bad, but not my favorite overall. The standings coming out of this race, it's so weird. We're so used to seeing all these backmarker organizations with the top 33 charter battle, but boy, do we just have an interesting battle this year. I mean, we sit right now. I want to know who in their right mind would have predicted this. We sit right now almost halfway through the year. We are 16 races through this season, and both Rick Ware Racing cars are inside the top 33. Right now, the 42 Legacy Motor Club and the 77 Aspire are still outside of the top 33. Now, I'm curious to see. We did see Ty Dillon. He's finally started to put together some good runs. He had that top 25 at Kansas, and he had that top 25 here. But it's been the ovals where we have seen Rick Ware Racing do better. So I'm curious to see how this goes at Nashville. Live Fast, they're out of the picture. Unfortunately for Live Fast Motorsports, they will go into the danger zone for 2024, which means at the end of 2024, if they don't finish top 33, NASCAR's either going to repossess their charter or they will sell their charter. Again, Joe Falk officially owns the charter in a combo effort with Matt Tifft and BJ McLeod. So, but right now, Rick Ware Racing, both cars inside the top 33, and that would basically be every NASCAR fan, except for me. I'd love that. But for every NASCAR fan and for the big teams, they don't want that to happen, because if that actually happens at the end of the year, that guarantees Rick Ware Racing 3 more years with 2 cars. So they don't want to see that happen. And it's not really necessarily going to hurt the 42 if they were to finish outside the top 33 for 1 year. We know they're going to be more competitive when they go to Toyota. The reason why I keep bringing it up is, yes, Legacy Motor Club is going to be a lot better in 2024. We know that. But no matter what, it has got to be embarrassing for that 42 team to realize that you are behind Rick Ware Racing in owner points. And honestly, you're not that far ahead from the car behind you. The 77 is only 8 points behind you. Realistically, if they have another bad race at Nashville, they could fall to 35th. So, I don't know. It's just really shocking to see. And it's not like they're close in points. I mean, Rick Ware is 32nd and 33rd. They hold a 5-point and 7-point gap. It shows you just how close these guys are every week. From 33rd to 35th, those 4 positions, they're separated by just 15 points. So it really shows you that the gap has really tightened up. And that's why I enjoy following this battle every week, because it could flip-flop every single week, theoretically. With the bad luck of the 42, the 77 will either have a great day or a crappy day. And half the time with the Rick Ware cars, they'll either run good or they'll run like crap. So it's very touch and go. Nashville is going to be, like I said, a very touch and go race. Obviously, we'll talk more about that on the preview show next week. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting weekend of racing. The Backmarkers, again, going to be providing a fun charter battle this year. We're going to get more in depth with it, especially as the season wears on. Again, we're still, like I said, we're not halfway through the year yet, so the outlook on it's not 100% realistic. Realistically, we won't be able to know the whole story about it until probably the chase or playoffs, however they want to call it. We'll get a real look at it. But, yeah, Sonoma, if I give the weekend out of 10, the grade, I give it a 6. Not the best, but I'm not going to call it bad by any means. But I give it a solid 6.6, 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, like I said, though, Nashville, back to the ovals. Prefer the ovals. It'll be a lot of fun a couple weeks. I hate that NASCAR's having an off weekend, but, we got to give these guys some time off sometime. So thanks again, guys, for tuning in to another episode of NASCAR Backmarker Battles. We will be live on Thursday at 7 p.m. again for the ARCA Racing Podcast, the Sonoma West Series review, and the Berlin. Although NASCAR is taking an off weekend, ARCA is not. So if you still want to watch an auto race, we have ARCA to watch. So Tune into that show on Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Again, don't forget to turn on that bell for notifications so you guys never miss a live podcast. Like and subscribe to the channel, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night. I've been Colby Evans, starting Park Car. I'm signing off. So long, guys.